Allora, ci siamo presi come stamattina i 15 minuti accademici prima di iniziare. Oggi pomeriggio con noi abbiamo Geoff Lawton, che è il permacultore internazionalmente conosciuto, che ha succeduto, si può dire succeduto? Sì? Che ha seguito le tracce di Bill Mollison. Io ho avuto la fortuna di conoscere personalmente Geoff quando sono partito per l'Australia, perché una volta aver conosciuto la permacultura attraverso i diversi social o internet, ho avuto la curiosità di voler approfondire e di voler capire che cosa avessero fatto in Australia. E quindi sono partito per l'Australia come woofer, cioè un semplice aiutante nelle aziende agricole, e la prima azienda a cui chiesi di poter lavorare fu proprio l'azienda di Geoff Lawton in Australia. Quindi fu una bellissima esperienza per me quella di lavorare in Australia e lavorare per l'azienda di Geoff. Poi fu proprio Geoff che mi mandò a lavorare all'azienda di Bill Mollison. Stiamo parlando del 2014, quindi stiamo parlando solo di 4 anni fa. E quindi quell'esperienza incredibile che feci con un viaggio in Australia per lavorare semplicemente nelle aziende agricole australiane e capire, cercare di approfondire di più la permacultura, mi ritrovai ad avere a che fare con Geoff, che mi chiese la cortesia di andare a dare una mano nell'azienda di Bill Mollison. Cortesia che chiaramente io ci pensai, ci pensai, perché in realtà dovevo andare, dovevo fare il tutto fare, non dovevo fare solo l'azienda, ma dovevo prendermi cura della casa e dovevo prendermi cura anche di Bill Mollison, che nel 2014 aveva 86 anni e che aveva già subito, aveva passato già un periodo bruttino con una serie di infarti. Quindi io dovevo prendermi cura di Bill Mollison, cosa che non avevo mai fatto in vita mia, quella di prendermi cura di una persona anziana, sacrificando magari quelli che erano i miei viaggi in Australia, quindi sacrificare le visite che avrei potuto fare in altre aziende agricole. Ma quando ti capita più l'occasione in Australia che qualcuno ti dice vuoi andare a lavorare col fondatore del movimento? E infatti presi la palla al balzo e andai a lavorare lì in Tasmania, dove chiaramente è il posto tuttora dove risiede la casa editrice di questo libro, la casa editrice australiana. E quindi io, oltre a dover prendermi cura dell'azienda agricola e di Bill, impacchettavo e spedivo i libri all'estero. Quindi io mi sono occupato, di fare le spedizioni, quindi ero lì che vedevo il libro, lo impacchettavo, lo spedivo, ed è esattamente quello che mi trovo a fare oggi: impacchetto e spedisco la versione italiana. Non vi rubo altro tempo, ma introduco Geoff Lawton. Ecco qua, grazie Geoff. I just told them that you were the one who sent me to work with Bill.
He needed the punishment.
It was a really hard work, because I can say I never been working so hard in my life. I've been with him 3 months, but it was really hard work. 24 hours, 24/7, I say, right?
Yeah, I think it would have been psychological, the effect. Yeah.
You can see that now.
Probably, yes. Terminal.
Okay, I'll just leave this to you, Geoff. We have a couple of hours together, and the topic is going to be permaculture and desertification.
Good.
So I'm going to be here anytime you need.
Okay. Well, it's really great to be here. And I never thought I would be here. First time in Italy for me and my family. And I kind of feel like I've been a large part of the translation project. It worked in a very lucky way, because my last online course, which I understand one person here has taken, I don't know whether anybody else has taken my last online course. In that course, I'd already taught 3 courses online, and very successfully, because I could see the success in my students, which is the only way you can judge your success as a teacher. So on the last online course, I decided to do the kind of ultimate teaching adventure, if you like, the ultimate expression of permaculture teaching that I could possibly think of, and that was to translate this manual into what I thought Bill was saying in my words, not his. Literally, sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph. But some paragraphs don't work, right? Because it's just Bill being naughty. Right? I'm hoping for delayed laughter here, okay, so I know there's translation, right? But anyway, I'd already done that just in front of these guys. And it was a marathon. I would describe it something like eating an elephant, one bite at a time. It's so big, you can't think forward. You just got to keep chewing your way through this massive amount of information, because this book, it has enormous amounts of information, and every time you read it, it gets bigger. And I think I've read it 50 times over the years. I've been involved in permaculture for 38 years this year. And the last time I read it, I thought it was the last time I was going to have to read it. It was bigger than ever, because I'm literally translating Bill's words into what I think he's trying to say. I've spent a lot of time with Bill. You hearing me okay out there? Yeah. In the last few years of Bill's life, I was teaching with him his last few courses. I'd spent a lot of time with Bill. I was sending people like Ignacio to look after him as an elderly carer. And I just got through this whole filming event and translation, and Ignacio started emailing me. What do you think this means? In Italian, how does that work? Well, I don't know Italian, but like he's saying to me, in Italian, this doesn't, we can't translate this exactly. Do you think this is how it works? And I woke up every morning, because of the time difference, to emails and emails. And I like to eat the elephant all over again, right? With an Italian recipe, right? So this time it was more exotic kind of thing, you know. And it's like, oh no, every day. 5 emails, 6 emails, sometimes 12 emails. If I left my phone on at night, I could hear it going ping, ping, ping. And I said, oh no, it's bloody Ignacio. And his team. Anyway, I had to actually literally go back and read again and think it through another way. So it was an interesting journey. And I didn't think it would lead me to sort of doing a presentation in a scene like this, but here we are. and I feel very privileged, because I've only been here 2 days and I have to leave tomorrow because I'm busy in the Middle East. I've left 13 students in the Dead Sea Valley with some of my co-teachers in a 1-month internship. A couple have been through the hospital since we've been away, or at least one has. It's a pretty serious situation we're in. But the 2 days I spent here have been really wonderful, amazing. I think I'd love to come back, actually. It's just refreshingly cultural. I mean, obviously it's history. I just spent 2 weeks in England. I'm English, by the way. I spent most of my life in Australia. I emigrated from England when I was in 1979. I was just 25 years old. So, yeah, it's just lovely to see a historic landscape and traditional farming, and so much, dare I say it, style. Real style. I mean, you know, individuality. So much extension of individuality that a lot of the world has lost, that the Italian culture seems to be hanging on to, and that's a great advantage at this point in time, because most places in the world have become kind of generic and kind of very similar. You know, you go from one place to another, and the shops and the fashions are all the same, and the styles more or less the same generic style. Where here you've still kept a lot of individuality, and from what I've talked to some farmers, it seems that it's still in the farms quite a bit too. I mean, obviously under the pressure of international trade and globalization, you're losing it a little bit, but you've got a lot more than most. Let's put it that way. So I'm in quite a lot of admiration of what I've seen of this area, and I've only seen a few little bits. Obviously, Italy is an incredibly diverse place, so that's kind of neat. So thanks for coming along. I'll do my best to try and talk to you about desertification. We're talking about desertification. All right. I've got no idea what my co-director covered, and it was an introduction to permaculture as I understand it. And I'd like to just go through a sort of, I'd like to build the picture of what it is that's important about understanding desertification for this particular region, because I think that's what's actually relevant. We could go into a lot of detail about global desertification, and in fact, the drylands chapter of this book is the largest chapter in the book. It's 100 pages, chapter 11, and in my online course, it's 3 weeks of lectures. I release once a week, and that's the biggest one. It's massive. But it's not all relevant to your situation at the moment. Let's hope a lot of it never is. So let's just start off with a quick refresher on what permaculture is. Permaculture is design. It's about design. It's actually about, what's permaculture about? It's about design and ethics. It's about science and ethics. It's very much about life sciences, although it goes into the hard sciences. The life sciences are the soft sciences. You can't box them up. You can't pin them down so easily. So if you want to expand that definition, permaculture is an ethical design science. It begins with ethics. It's centered on ethics. So it's design, and it's ethical design science. Everything we teach is provable. I can legitimize and rationalize all the design work I do. The ethics give us some parameters, some controls on what it is we're using science for. And that's where the sustainability bit really comes in. Because for something to be sustainable, this word that's been bandied around in aid for 20 years, it's very simple what sustainability is. It's just an energy audit. A sustainable system produces more energy than it consumes. Enough in surplus to maintain and create, to maintain and replace that system over its lifetime. You could say to actually create maintain and replace that system over the component parts lifetimes of the system. That's how the Americans like you to say it. They seem to be a little bit afraid of it. And they don't like the idea of you saying the system has a lifetime. A sustainable system goes on indefinitely. So for something to have more, to create more energy than it consumes, it has to be linked to living systems, biology. Biology will self-perpetuate, self-extend, self-evolve if it's given the right conditions. And what we do is we facilitate those conditions by design. We work with the natural systems, but we also work with some appropriate technology and modern science that can allow that to happen. Obviously, we work a lot with the internet. Today, I have a bigger internet team than I do on the ground. And I do a bit of everything. I'm a farmer. That's what I love to do. That's what I really love to do. That's what I'd be doing if I didn't have to do this. That's my passion. I'm an educator. And I'm an aid worker. I still do aid. I'm working for free in Jordan. I'm a volunteer. Always have been there. And a lot of aid work. I'm also a consultant, and a very well-paid one. I am not cheap. I give work to my team, who are well-paid, but less than me, because I limit my work now at my experience and age to more important work. And today, I'm a filmmaker, more in front of the camera than behind, and we do an awful lot with the internet and films, which is the great technology today, because that's why I haven't got a presentation, because there's no point. You can see everything you like online. I've got terabytes worth of film material coming out all the time. We have full-time cameramen, full-time studio, all sorts of things, because that's how we get messages out. So permaculture's an ethical design science, and there's 3 simple ethics. Earth care. If it's a permaculture design, it's caring for the earth and the environment. It's improving the environment. It's making everything about the environment better. People care. It's making life better for people. It's improving our living, how we live. That doesn't necessarily mean just money. It's our quality of life in a quality environment. And the third ethic is the one people may have most trouble with. It's the return of any net surplus to improving the environment, improving the lives of people, which benefits us all. So improving the environment is improving things for people. Improving things for people should improve the environment at the same time. We shouldn't be destructive. We should be the most beneficial elements on Earth, and we can be. And there's nothing worth investing in except improving the environment and improving the lives of people globally. If we do this, which we can, if we take up this with intention, we become the most beneficial element on Earth. At the moment, we're the most damaging element. But everything that you look at in nature, everything that you look at in the universe is a balance. So if something can be extremely bad, it can also be extremely good. It balances. So by intention, we can be extremely beneficial for the planet. And it's a matter of understanding how we behave, how we act, how we engage with the environment and each other. So what happens then is we actually change our definition of wealth. Our wealth improves, our livings improve. So true wealth is not necessarily linked to money. I know I work for a lot of rich people, and they're not always wealthy. they're rich, they have a lot of money, that doesn't mean they're wealthy. They can be quite unhappy. Wealth is actually an abundance of clean air, an abundance of clean water, an abundance of clean food, an abundance of sensible housing and buildings that heat themselves, cool themselves, have very low embodied energy and can easily be replaced when needed without damaging the environment. They're very low energy buildings that are made with low embodied energy, and that's easy enough to do. If you want to do it, you should pay your architects that way, by the lack of energy the buildings consume in their materials and their functions. And then an abundance of community. An abundance of community. So you're really looking at warmth, friendship, and community in that point. So this is what we design. This is literally what we design. And the living systems of Earth respond very quickly, very, very quickly. As soon as you start to do the right thing, the natural systems of Earth respond and back you up. And if you start to design this way and implement projects, you see the response. You see it quite quickly. I think if with intention, we could have the Earth on a very fast repair sequence. We could be moving towards repair very rapidly in 5 years. We could probably drought-proof most continents in 5 years. But we'd have to apply. We'd have to actually move into action. We have the technology. We definitely have the budget. We have the resources. We have the machinery. So in some ways, everything we need to do is there for us. The technology is there. The machinery is there. It's just the will. Do we really want to do it? That's all it takes, right? Because everything else, there's no challenge in this. No challenge whatsoever. It's all quite proven. And that's the great thing about the internet. More and more, it's all proven. I predate the internet as a designer. When I did my course in 1983, there was no internet. Since then, it's much, much easier to prove what we do by YouTube. If I hear of designers that are supposed to be really good at what they do, I don't believe them if they haven't got lots of YouTube videos. If you're hiding what you're doing, then you're not a good designer. Right? There's no reason you don't have everything out there on the internet. And there's no reason it's not actually in a video format either, which is something that people then believe. Because we believe the screen. We're all screenagers. Most of us in this room spend 60 hours a week looking at a screen. That's quite a normal amount of time for us today. So by taking this design process, we then have to work out what it is we do. And then we want to talk about desertification in this region of southern Italy, which is so close to North Africa, which is already desertified and has been for a while. And it's so close to the largest desert on Earth. To achieve the design process, we've got to look at the parameters of design and how they fit in with natural functions, how they fit with a natural environment. And what you do to reverse the process of a climate that's drying up, or a climate that's being affected by some climate variations, climate change if you like, but climate weirdness. And I've been told here you've had some weird weather. Everywhere is getting weird weather. I won't say it's climate warming or climate cooling or whatever it is, it's weird. We're getting the hottest day, the coldest day, the windiest day, the wettest day, for that day on record, everywhere at once. Everywhere is getting the extremes. So expect hotter, expect colder, expect wetter, expect windier. Because that's the thing that we're not much talking about in climate change. Generally, it is a little bit, it's warming. The overall trend is warming a little bit. And that doesn't look good on the ice core data. The reference material people use is the ice core data. Ice core data potentially goes back 500 million years. So when you look at that, there's a horrible scenario appearing, which is increased carbon, increased temperature, leads to a vertical cliff. And that vertical cliff is called an ice age. But of all the climbs out of ice ages and stable plateaus, which is what we're on what's called a stable plateau, never before in the ice core data have we seen the carbon graph go past the temperature graph. So the big difference right now that we can't see in anything we check over a great period of time is this carbon content in the atmosphere has gone in front of the climate. It's gone before, but with the temperature. The temperature's not actually keeping up with the speed the carbon has increased. That's a new thing. If that's correct, I don't know whether it's correct. I don't know. To me, it stands to reason that the interrupter of the massive amount of energy that hits this planet from the sun is filtered through ecosystems. Those ecosystems absorb that solar energy and convert it into life energy. They're like a filter. The tropical forests where you get vertical sun at the equator or close to the equator filter out 98% of that sunlight. Only 2% of it hits the ground. So that's where you get a lot of effect, but everywhere you get an effect. So the energy storage mechanism are ecosystems. And we've got some of that storage. You're sitting here today because you're solar powered. You're solar powered humans, we all are. The food you ate processed the sun's energy with photosynthesis, or the animals you ate plants and vegetation that process the sun's energy through photosynthesis. So the very fact you're sitting here listening to me means you're using some of that solar energy. And our life zones and ecosystems are great big batteries. And when you take them down, the battery goes flat because it's lost its ability to store. So then you get other consequences of that energy coming straight at geological Earth. And more or less, that's a simplification of what's happening. Monoculture fields don't do it. Singular monoculture tree systems don't do it. Nothing like an ecosystem. If you look at ecosystems and you want to measure an ecosystem and say, is this ecosystem complete? How would I quickly, in layman's terms, look at an ecosystem and say, this ecosystem is actually fully charged? It's quite simple. The top predator is alive. If you have the top predator in good condition, all the life zones from top predator right down to the fungi and life in the soils, all there, more or less, good enough. If you're talking about the Amazon, that top predator, let's say, is a hunting pair of jaguar. They're the top predator in the Amazon. Everyone knows about the Amazon. It's a famous place, massive tropical ecosystem. A hunting pair of jaguar need 35,000 hectares of pristine Amazon. That's a lot of Amazon. That's just one hunting pair. That's a lot of battery as well. That's a lot of storage. That's a lot of life absorption. One of the problems with this is when we look at hard science and soft science, there's one thing that they don't marry up on. When we're talking about energy, and we'll quote someone really famous here, let's quote Einstein. Energy is constant. Energy just goes from one media to another. But a lot of people don't complete his sentence, and that was, entropy is constantly increasing. Entropy is the energy that was contained when it's been spent. So it's constantly increasing because energy is taken up in ecosystems, but every element in an ecosystem eventually dies and loses its energy. If you think about it as say, the petrol in your car, or the electricity in your battery in your car, if it's an electric car, that's got storage. Once you spend it by the energy pushing the car along, it's gone. You've got to recharge the battery if it's an electric car, or you've got to fill it up with petrol. That petrol potentially explodes in the engine and moves things around. It has energy that is spent in the explosive event and then drives the mechanics of the car along. A little bit pops out the exhaust pipe, equalizes with the atmosphere, that's it, it's gone. It's a raindrop falling at the top of a mountain range, coming down all the river systems and creating life all the way along. But the funny thing about life is, it's got nothing to do with entropy according to science. Science says entropy is an energy equation. But when you look at living systems, there's less life at the top and more life at the bottom of the gravitational flow through a landscape, even a tree. There's only specialist life at the top and a lack of diversity. There's only a few specialists. As you come right down to the bottom, you get more and more interactions of more and more diversity. So you could make a very non-scientific statement to say it would appear that life is anti-entropic. It increases the ability to store energy within a system. And that's what we do. We work with that to extend the energy within living systems so that we have a system that has a sustainable potential. Now, to look at this region and say, oh, we want to address the fact that it's getting drier and it's becoming more like a desert, desertification. First off, you've got to understand the climate. You've got to have a sort of, well, okay. We talk about the climate every day, don't we? We sort of say, oh, it's sunny today, it's cold today, it's windy today. It's one of the most common things people talk about is the general conditions that we feel from the climate. But quite often, we don't actually really pin down what it is that makes our climate the local climate. It's quite easy here because your climate classification is very obvious. It's called Mediterranean. For obvious reasons. You're next to the Mediterranean. So you have, if you go a long way from the equator, you go into cold climates where you have snow every year and quite a lot of it. And then you go, that's called humid cold. And then you have humid cool where you get light snows every year. And then you go to warm, humid, temperate climates where it doesn't often snow. And the very last one in the humid, temperate climates is this one. This is the Mediterranean where you still have winter rain and summer dry. Now, as soon as you cross towards the equator, you go to subtropics. That's not inside the tropics, it's outside the tropics usually. There are variations to this because landscape affects it. You get mountains and different things affect the climate a bit. It's called the orographic effect. But just generally, you go to subtropics where you get summer rain and winter dry. And all the way towards the tropics, you've changed to winter dry and summer rain. Until you get really close to the tropics, so really close to the equator, 6 degrees to the equator, you get 2 rainy seasons. You get a double rainy season. And they occur on the special days of the year when the sun crosses the equator vertically. That's the equinox. March the 22nd, it's coming north towards you guys. And September the 22nd, it's going south towards us in Australia. Those are the days that the sun crosses the equator vertical. Only 2 days of the year. That's what we call the equinox. So we know when midsummer is. Midsummer in the Northern Hemisphere is June the 22nd, 23rd. Midsummer in the Southern Hemisphere is December the 22nd, 23rd. Now, something we should all know is what is your sun angles? What is your midday, midsummer sun angle, and what is your midday, midwinter sun angle? Because it's a constant. Wherever you live on this planet, those angles are really important if we're going to start designing to absorb the sun's energy or buffer the sun's energy. In too hot a climate, you want to buffer it and shade. In a hotter climate, you need to, in a cooler climate, you need to absorb it. So these are relevant, but because you're right next to that switch in summer rain to winter rain, you're the hottest of the winter rain climates. You're the hottest of the temperate climates. And because of that, you have 2 slowdowns, not 1. Go a little bit away, go a bit towards the cold climates, you only have 1 slowdown, it's called winter. But you actually have a slowdown because it gets so hot and dry. You have a slowdown because it gets cold. You have a slowdown because it gets so hot and dry. You have 2 stress periods. If you use that, that means you've got 4 edges as it gets cooler to warmer, as it gets warmer to cooler. It does it. There's 2 changes, so there's an edge on either side of those changes. Now, if you go towards a continent, if you go inland, it gets drier and hotter. It gets drier in midsummer, and it gets hotter and colder. So as you get away from the ocean, you get hot, dry summers, and you get colder temperatures in winter. But as you go towards the equator from here towards the subtropics, on that line, 23.3, latitude 23.3 is the tropical line. Tropic of Cancer in the north, Tropic of Capricorn in the south, you hit the deserts. So for you guys, it's the biggest desert on Earth. Just south of here is the Sahara. And running right through the middle of the Sahara is the Tropic of Cancer. All the big deserts are on those 2 tropical lines. Capricorn south, Cancer north, 23.3 north, 23.3 south. Now, it doesn't go to the subtropics if you're on a big landmass. Next to the coast, yeah, because you're getting an effect from the ocean. But as soon as you go inland on those tropical lines, you hit the big deserts, and you got that big, long Sahara. It goes right across that big, wide continent of Africa. So you've got this massive drying effect there. And what makes that a desert, what makes that dry lands, like all dry lands, is the evaporation is much higher than rainfall. That's very, very relevant. Most people don't think about that. Now, because you're approaching that, because that's just south of us, and you have such a hot, dry summer, and you have a cool, wet winter, you're nearly there. You're very, very close to being evaporation over rainfall. And there's only one thing that changes it. There's only one thing that stops you going over that line. If you add up your evaporation over rainfall, it's just about the same. You're just on the humid side, naturally, in the Mediterranean region. And by the way, that terminology is used for South Africa. That terminology is used for Southern Australia. Southern Australia is Mediterranean. Tasmania is Mediterranean. South Africa is Mediterranean. It's a terminology used across the world to describe this climate. Now, a figure that most people don't think about when they talk about rainfall, they talk about rain coming out of the sky. That's not the only thing that affects the climate. There's also snow. There's also ice if you've got high mountains. But there's one other thing that makes the soil wet. When you're talking precipitation, you have to add up everything that makes the soil damp, that adds moisture to the soil. It's not about what comes out of the sky in physical rain. It can be snow melt. It could be hail. There's one figure that we don't measure. It's difficult to measure. It's enormously life interactive. And we very rarely consider it. And there's a lot of forces out there in the world that probably don't want us to consider it either, and would prefer things to go as they are. And that is condensation. Condensation. I woke up the last 2 mornings to condensation near Nocky. It was pretty wet on the ground. It hadn't rained. It was pretty wet. There's a few trees around in that region. The grass was pretty wet, and the soil was pretty wet. Even on bare soil fields, I got kind of cloggy. I got red soil all over my shoes, walking around, looking at things. The condensation figure can be enormous. If you've got something for it to condensate on, the difference between bare soil and a natural forest is enormous in the volume of moisture that hits the soil, falling as condensation. So, understanding this climate is kind of crucial, because there's a lot of people in this climate. It's an interesting climate, for sure. But if you take the trees off, if you reduce the evaporation figure, you start clocking over onto the other side, which is more evaporation than rainfall. You look a little bit like a desert at times naturally. I like to say, when I'm looking at marginal deserts and dry lands, in the summer, they're brown at the bottom and green at the top. And in the winter, they're green at the bottom and brown at the top. It's a saying I've made up for myself. Because in winter, you have green herbs, but your trees have lost their leaves, so they're brown, most of them. And then in summer, the herbs dry off and go brown, but the leaves are on the trees. So it's green at the top and brown at the bottom in summer. And it's green at the bottom and brown at the top in winter. And as you know, there's a beautiful period in spring where it's green at the bottom and green at the top. And the trees have flowered and you've got fresh leaves on the trees, and it's still green on the bottom. That's when deserts look the best, actually. Deserts look best in the spring, just for a couple of weeks. Jordan, which is horrifically dry compared to this, actually looks a little bit like Europe for about 2 weeks. Just a little bit, right? And if you're going to want to make it look good, that's when you go. I usually go to Jordan when it looks the worst at the end of summer now, to get a bit of work done before the temperatures start cooling down, and if any rain's coming, it's coming soon. So this consideration is really important, and we have to work out how we design that in without losing production, and so that we can actually put our Mediterranean climate back into function, and production and diversity, stability, be sustainable, all these things. And we have to know how to pattern it. Right? So it means patterning. Permaculture is very much about patterning. If you just look at the history of the actual Mediterranean region, or any Mediterranean region, but we may as well look at the Mediterranean, as soon as you take the vegetation cover off, particularly the forest, which has got a few layers, it's not the Amazon forest, but it's still a forest, right? As soon as you take it off, it goes into desertification. If you look at what's happened in Spain, right, the vegetation covers come off, and southern Spain's dried up. If you look at Greece, which has shallow topsoils, which it appears you have a little bit too, you've got a set of deforestation regimes that have happened, going back to ancient culture, and were never replaced, because the general agricultural use was very much going into grazing. Once you get into dry lands, once you become a dry land, you can stay there very easily. It's very easy to maintain dry lands as dry. It's one of the easiest things to do. Other climates come back on their own. This one would, any of the Mediterranean regions would come back on their own over time. But if you just interfere a little bit, if you just do a little bit of overgrazing, if you don't allow vegetation to grow, then it will stay dry. It'll actually get drier and drier. And with that, you'll lose topsoil. Because for a period of time, you still get quite good winter rains. And you're losing stability as well. So the neat thing is we don't have to have natural forest, as in we don't have to have native forest. Any forest will do it. We don't need to be prejudiced about what type of vegetation we use. It could be quite exotic if you like. It could be all foreigners if you like. It doesn't have to be native forest. There's no prejudice about condensation. Condensation will condensate on any surface that you supply, and some sort of vegetation is the easiest. So there's a whole lot of write-ins today about weeds being the saviours of the world, because the world's in that state that's where we're at. So we have to realise that this is very important to understand, that the reason a lot of the Mediterranean regions go into desert is because it's quite easy to do, and it's easy to keep it as dry lands. Same as a lot of deserts themselves, where you go into deserts, a lot of them were actually, they're a lot more vegetated than they are now. And luckily, we've got reference in Australia. You may wonder why permaculture started in Australia. People often have wondered, and actually have been quite critical about permaculture and why we should listen to an Australian system. And I'm English, so I got no reason to, well, originally I had no reason to defend Australia, but I've lived there more than half my life now. And I like to find answers to those questions, because I have no doubt about the system. I've seen it work 100% anywhere, doesn't matter where. But Australia's kind of weird, as you might know. It's got quite a lot of weird combinations of stuff. I realised that's why somebody, it happened to be the man who authored this book, Bill Mollison, came up with this sort of concept of consciously designing landscapes of productivity and ecological stability for very good reason. The thing that affected him quite a lot was the Club of Rome. That's ironic, isn't it? I've never thought about that until that moment. Right? The Club of Rome was the first time that there was a meeting here in Italy where there was a realization that the world's resources are starting to deplete and we ought to do something about it, which was in the 70s, I think. Yeah. But let's get back to Australia. Why would something come out of a continent that has so few people? Well, that's part of the process. Australia is the oldest continent on Earth, geologically. It's the flattest continent on Earth. It has the least amount of highlands. It's the driest continent on Earth. It has never had an ice age. Never had an ice age. So it has enormous diversity of species. And some of the animal species have evolved to be very strange, with strange transport systems like kangaroos and marsupials, all these things. We have a very, very large amount of species in the trees and vegetation. There's 873 eucalypts alone. And the average eucalypt forest has 800 associate species. That's kind of weird. If you look at the northern hemisphere, which has had multiple ice ages, there's much less in general genus of trees. You have the oak trees that go all the way around the northern hemisphere. You know, you have the ash and elm, and you have common species, but nowhere near the same number. So it's strange, it's not been well understood. And it's only been colonized by modern industrial man, let's say. Let's not count the native people, because that's a different story. But colonization happened in the last 200 years, just a little bit over 200 years, and we did more damage with less people over more area in less time than anybody in the history of the world. You can't do it again, there's not enough world left. And more damage with less people over less time, over more area than anyone in the history of the world. But also, we imported more species than anybody else, because we didn't really care about Australia. The colonists came in and they brought everything with them. Acres and acres of trees in pots. There's a larger diversity of non-native species in the Australian continent than anywhere on Earth. I've had to take South African seeds to South America. I couldn't get Gramachama in America, in South America, and they're Brazilian. And I had to take them back home from Australia as seed to grow them in some of our projects. But we haven't domesticated any species. The food plants of the world and the animals, your domestic animals and your domestic plants that you ate today, all the food you ate today doesn't come from Australia unless you had some macadamia nuts. Because they're the only things that's come out of Australia, and that was done by the Americans in Hawaii, not by Australians. And they're actually native where I live, in the forest. But we've speciated them to be very dependent on chemicals and fertilizer and all kinds of stuff. But we haven't produced anything in Australia, and yet we have more diversity than any other continent. You see, and your food that you ate today, more or less came from the continents of the world, evenly divided from most continents of the world. If you had carrots, they came from Afghanistan. If you had tomatoes, imagine Italy without tomatoes. Wasn't that long ago, right? They come from the Andes. Potatoes. Actually, wheat didn't come from here either, you know. If you go back to the Middle Ages, there was a very small diversity of crops in our food. Today we have 800 times more diversity potential, 800 times, and none of it comes from Australia, except for macadamia nuts. That's all part of the picture, you see. Bill realised some of this stuff and realised there was problems, and then started to look at the Australian landscape and ecology that he loved, and then realised, wow, what are we doing? Where I live, I have an animal called a Bandicoot. In our area, there's a lot of them. They're about the size of a rabbit. They look a little bit like a rabbit at a distance. It's actually a small marsupial with a backward-facing pouch. They're the fastest gestating mammal in the world. They have an 11-day pregnancy. Like to have an 11-day pregnancy? Yeah. Not been domesticated, but probably quite a fast breeding bit of meat, you know, if you did. This is Australia. So it's a system that came out of somebody's realization that there's issues, sustainable issues, resource issues, problems, and then looked at an environment that's rather unusual and looked at the recent history of change, and then realized that we could intentionally design systems that improved on nature itself. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Not only improved on the productivity, but improved on the functionality of nature. Improved on our ability to store water, trap water, soak water, increase spring flows, create new springs, and even speciate new plants, vegetations, and animals. It's designed by intention, and it's designed to actually reduce our need for so much energy. And energy in the way we use in our houses, use in our transport, use to keep ourselves warm, keep ourselves cold, all these sort of things. It's a combination of all of that. So it also goes into appropriate energy, appropriate technology, and the word is appropriate. And it changes things from here. It doesn't have to go, oh, we all have to go into Armageddon tomorrow and go back to a caveman era. No, we can change from where we are now, right, the situation we're in. But as long as we start to change, then the natural system starts to respond extremely quickly. So once we understand our climate a little bit more and how vulnerable this climate is, then we can say, right, okay, what do we do? Right? How do we buffer this potential switch from Mediterranean to a dry land? Now, the next thing you have to realize about climate, then, I've already given you a bit of a clue, is you've got to understand trees. And I'm going to use the word trees because ecosystems major in trees. I don't believe in planting trees. I don't think we should plant trees. I think we should plant ecosystems. I think we should have the intention to plant something way more than just trees. So when you look at the ecosystems of the world, they major in the canopy trees. They major in trees. And then everything else is layers that follow through that make up a functional ecology. Now, rather than look at how wonderful trees are and getting all woo-woo about it, and sort of esoteric about trees, and rather than talk about botany, we don't need to talk about botanical names, right, and things, and genus and species and all this. What we need to do is we need to look at trees and their energy transaction, and particularly their energy transaction with the weather. And once we've gone through a design process and we understand a bit about how we design, methods of design and why we design, then we need to look at climate. Climate focuses your design. What climate does is say, I'm in the Mediterranean and this is why I'm designing this way. It's with focus. It's no good designing like Northern Europe in the Mediterranean. It's no good designing like tropics in the Mediterranean. You've got to design in the Mediterranean like the Mediterranean. This is your climate. This is the way it behaves. That gives you focus. Now, then you need to understand how the trees interact with the weather systems. And the weather systems are very much linked to the trees with water, and then the soils. So when we're looking at trees, we're looking at an element that does more than one thing, many, many things. So they buffer the evaporation with shade. They buffer the evaporation with wind, reducing the wind as wind shelters. They buffer the evaporation by physically dropping their body to the soil regularly and at the end of their life permanently. They are aerodynamic and aquadynamic in the way they react to energies of the air and the water. The way they're pushed, they shape. So they become more aerodynamic. They will shape to the wind. As a designer, you can walk into a field with individual trees and you can see the prevailing wind. By just walking around trees, you can see the wind shear, and you can see the strength of the wind as well by the amount of wind shear. And you get used to that. You can You can do that with patches of trees or the front line of a forest. You can see the lift of the wind. It's actually the same shape as an aeroplane's wing. It's aerodynamic. But then, over a period of time, you can realize that there's a lot of energy transactions with the soil and the life in the soil. So there are geological materials that are lifted out of the soil strata and subsoil strata and base rocks and brought to the surface to make up the bodies of plants and trees. So the simple classification is trees are woody and herbs are non-woody. So herbaceous material doesn't have any wood. Bananas are herbs, they don't have any wood. Right? But of all that vegetation, their bodies are made up of elements. Like you might see thistles growing in the field here, and then when you go and study a thistle, you find out it's got lots of iron and copper in it. It's a miner of iron and copper. But because it's actually a weed and it only comes for a period of time and then dies out, it replaces the iron and copper that's not available. And it actually often is there, the plant can bring it up to the surface and deposit it with its body over time, dropping leaves and eventually its whole body. But the copper and iron are actually deficient because it's gone acid or it's gone alkali. It's not, the soil's not so neutral. You can actually start to read the condition of your soil by the plants that grow. The trees are a higher function. The trees are up a lot higher. You can actually use weeds as indicators of symptoms. Plants that have very deep tap roots that volunteer to grow are decompacting the soil. Plants that have hairnet roots are holding loose soil together. Plants that come after fire are bringing potassium back to the surface that's been burnt off in smoke and gone up in the air. And the fine, hot fly ash has leached away and left the soil deficient of potassium. Nitrogen plants, which are very important, plants that fix nitrogen, the legumes, are bringing nitrogen back to the surface. They're taking it from the air and depositing it. But the interaction in the roots is not just the roots. It's the soil life. It's true to say that you can't feed plants organically. You can't directly feed plants organically. A little bit with solution, but it won't be very strong. Plants have to drink. Plants and trees are hydraulic. They're a hydraulic column of water from the bottom of their roots to the top of their canopy. It's a column of water all the way. And wilt is when the pressure starts to go down. Some plants don't recover from wilt. Primitive plants. And what we do with chemical fertilizer is we put a soluble element in the water that they have to drink. They're not choosing to drink it, they've just got to drink because they're hydraulic. But the organic elements, the natural feeding mechanisms, are from the soil organisms to the plant. So when you feed organically, you're actually feeding the soil organisms and they're feeding the plant. It's an energy transaction through the atmosphere around the roots. So it's a different process. The reason you get such a response from chemical fertilizer and why it doesn't do the soil any favors is because it's soluble. It leaches quickly, it disappears quickly, but the plants have to drink it. It's like force feeding you. It's like feeding you through an intravenous drip. You have no choice. The plants have no choice. They've got to drink the soluble nutrient, and most of it's salt-based. It's got to be watered in. It's either got to be put down before rain, or it's got to be washed in with irrigation. So our trees are interacting with a whole life cycle in the soil. There's 50 million genus of bacteria. There's 50 million genus of fungi in the soil. We know nothing about them. 1% of them we know a little bit about. It's a new science. It's just been entered back into, really. Since 1850, we ignored it. A guy called von Liebig, an Austrian chemist, discovered by using sulfuric acid, which was newly created in laboratories. As soon as we could make sulfuric acid in a laboratory, we were able to dissolve rocks and make soluble fertilizer. And von Liebig made a statement that all we need is nitrogen, phosphate, and potassium, NPK, and it will fertilize everything. And he was right. It won't necessarily make it healthy in the end, and it's not doing your soil any favors. And that's where it all started, from that ignoring the life in the soil. It's so complicated. It's the most complicated living system in the known universe. But the important thing is that complicated living system is what exchanges the energy across the root atmosphere. It's called the rhizosphere, and that's what brings nutrient to the surface. And ecosystems do it so well. Now, when we start to design that really well, it starts to work for us. So to say it's just the forest is not exactly right. It's very much the life in the soil as well. And there's a whole new science revolution here that's happening. There's a whole new thing with developing specialized compost teas where 6 liters of compost will fertilize a hectare if it's done the right way, if it's done with oxygenated compost tea and feed mechanisms. There's a lot of us have now got microscopes. I'm a farmer with a microscope, 600 times magnification microscope. I'm looking at the soil life. And the price that we can sell high quality compost is ridiculous to the farmers who know. If you can do it, if you can actually do that. It seems to be difficult to learn for a lot of farmers. You don't have to be a compost expert though. But you have to go into this understanding of what it is we're doing, basically what it is we're doing. So this is all part of the energy of the transaction between plants, trees, ecosystems, the soil, and the water cycles. Now, and until we can really understand that it's the condensation on the hills, the interaction in the roots that hold up most of our stream flows and spring flows. When we've got that on side, when we've got that working for us, we've got a great advantage. I mean, any farmer would like to have extra springs, or a spring at all, running that he could use. Pure water coming out of the ground. So being able to work with these systems, and from what I see of this area, you've got some unusual soils in that you've got this very, very porous situation where there's not a lot of surface flows unless there's a very big rain, and a lot of water sinks very fast. So you've got these particular close to the surface rocks, gorgeous soil. I love the soil, looks great, but very quick absorption. So it's slightly different, it's slightly unique to itself. That's great, nothing wrong with that. So when we realize that these ecosystems build minerals, they're very much like the ecosystem in your gut. If you're looking at the latest health things about how you get more minerals into you, you often don't have a health problem, you have a mineral deficiency. It's because the garden of your gut has got a problem. A lot of our refined sugars and refined foods have degraded the ecosystems that transfer the nutrient in our food to our bodies. It's no different. There's an energy transaction happening in our intestines. And the majority of people have candida. And even when you have no symptoms, you have an anaerobic fungus. And I suppose it's a curse of a lot of modern food. And going to fresh food, local food, high quality nutrient dense food, which is nearly always organic, let's say, and natural ferments boost those organisms in the stomach, in the gut, that give you a better transfer of minerals into your body and give you a health vitality. Give you more energy, give you more enthusiasm, give you more passion, give you more, wanting to engage in life. Because the anaerobic conditions, which are not the conditions of the soil, most of the time we don't want anaerobes in our soil. They're the bad guys most of the time. There are people who grow in water, okay? There are rice paddies, there are swamp production, but generally we're in dry soil, we're in aerobic soil, and it's the same in our gut. We start off anaerobic in our stomach, but we end up aerobic in our intestines. All of this is coming around in knowledge now. All of this, you can research it, you can find this stuff. And there's a real boost in the natural ferments, natural vinegars for a start. Vinegars are easy to make. You make plenty of wine, you can make vinegar just as easier actually. And herbal tinctures, particular herbal tinctures. So let me give you one clue about candida. I do a little bit of herbal remedies and I grow a lot of herbs. There's one particular herb that we've discovered that eliminates candida. It's very handy and it's called Toothache Plant. Toothache. Like you got toothache? You can Google it, of course. Get it on Wikipedia. Toothache plant actually wipes out candida in your gut, and that makes a big difference to your health. I think you'll hear a lot about it. I think you'll hear it coming up a lot. So understanding this stuff, understanding how much these trees are doing. Now also, a lot of us think that if we have extra trees in the landscape, they're going to use extra water. They're going to be in competition, right? This is a misnomer, right? It's not exactly true. There is an awful lot of water. The majority of water is held in the top 600 millimeters. Actually, that's most of your soil. Right? The root net of a forest holds most of the water in the top 600 millimeters. Now, right at the top, where you have the rotting organic matter, you can have, if you have 3 inches of organic matter, if you have 3 inches of leaf litter, you can hold, when I say 3 inches, you're not in inches, 75 centimeters, no, 75 millimeters of organic matter under your forest, leaf litter. You'll have 25 millimeters of water saturated in there. It's 3 to 1. I was stood under one of your oaks the other morning looking down at the ground, as I often am, and it was nearly all acorns. Nearly the whole thing was covered in acorns without the leaf litter as well. I actually took a photograph of it. It made me really wonder how much leaf litter you would have in some natural situations. So you have that retention entropy, holding water higher in the soil profile. You have that. Then you have reduced evaporation. Remember, you're evaporation vulnerable with some shade. Then you have wind buffering, which creates wind, causes evaporation. Ask any housewife who hangs washing up. Your washing line needs to be in the wind, right, ladies? It's called the clothesline effect. When you're exposed to too much wind causing evaporation, it's actually officially, it's called the clothesline effect. And when you shelter it out, it's called the oasis effect. Those are the correct terms in English. So by having enough trees to buffer the wind, create extra shade, create extra organic matter to retain moisture higher with that root net, you then add the condensation. And remember, you're vulnerable to evaporation in this edge climate to desert. You add that on top and you come out in surplus. Okay. Now you're going to say to me, or you're probably thinking, yeah, but not all trees are good. No, that's true. Absolutely true. So what can they be? Trees can be bad, negative. Trees can be positive, and trees can have no effect at all. Be neutral. So these trees are called allelopathic. These vegetation, they disfavor other vegetation. Actually, globally, there's only about 5% allelopathic trees. If you don't count all the general good of trees, if you say, these trees, what are the good trees that actually have something we want? Fruit, timber, whatever, like they're something that give us something we want. They're positive, they're worth having, they have a product. Generally, it's about 10%. That leaves 85% that don't have any effect at all. That's all we're dealing with. There's your choices. So, if we're majoring keeping that one out of the way, and we're favouring this one, we're in a more productive landscape. We can include some of these, if you like. If you want particular endemic trees, if you want particular native trees. But actually, there's always mulch, there's always organic matter, there's always wind buffering, there's always shading. These are actually neutral. And it's probably just we haven't thought about what the use is. It might be an obscure use. It might be something that if you cut it down and dry it and get it wet again, you can make fungi. It might be something that's actually quite good bee forage, but you're not counting it. It might be craft, it might be something else. Your major productive trees that we use as humanity is about 10%. Of course, that's not actually counting that we haven't named everything yet. And we keep renaming things, like we keep changing, we keep splitting the genus and changing the names. But a lot of people don't realise that we have nowhere near named everything yet. On average, we discover 2,020 new plants and trees every single year. 2,020 discovered every year. We're not at the, oh, you think we know everything? No, we don't know much at all about the living world. It's extremely complex. We know nothing about the soil life, hardly anything. It's ridiculous how much we don't know about the soil life. And we've only just realised that we thought the maximum we could have was 50 tonnes to the hectare of soil life. Now we're up to 200, potentially 200 tonnes of life in a hectare of soil. There's no way you can put 200 tonnes of life on top of the soil. 200 tonnes of cows on a hectare of soil, that's called a feedlot. We don't do that. We don't need to do that. So last year there was a very big tree discovered in the Congo. It was, big trunk like this, and a legume in the Congo rainforest. Never been named before. Never discovered. This is, while the world's collapsing and we're interrupting, weather cycles, we're changing things, we're eroding enormous amounts of soil. We still haven't even named the world yet, and that's been our obsession. Our obsession in the reductionist science world is to name everything, quantify everything, percentify everything. You know, get on top of it all and get it all catalogued. Well, we've done all these incredibly clever things with the internet and technology and cameras like this, microphones like this, and but we haven't generally got a handle on what it is we need to do to actually make the world stable and give us a happy life where we're not stressed and we have a general understanding of what supplies our needs. My students arrive, I've taught 15,000 students over my teaching life. My students arrive more and more informed. They know everything. Well, they're one click away of thinking they know everything with a computer. They've got access to every bit of information they ever want. But they can do less and less and less. They don't know how to set a broody chicken. They don't know how long eggs stay fertile before you can't put them under a chicken. Most people don't know that anymore. They don't know that you can take an egg and turn it every day, as long as you don't put it in the fridge and keep it at room temperature, and 29 days later you can still stick it under a chicken or in an incubator and it will still hatch. Your grandmother would have been very disappointed if you didn't know that. But I don't think people know how to boil a cup of tea pretty soon. It'll have to come out of a packet or something, There's less and less practicality. So people become more and more informed, less and less capable, and more worried or disturbed that there's this duplicity of knowing everything but not being able to do anything. Everything is supplied. Everything's screen stimuli, but not practical stimuli. That's why we do practical courses. Many young people come and they don't know how to use hand tools, and I have to tell them quick before they get a really bad lower back, because they won't be working if they keep using a hand tool in a particular way. Just no one's ever taught basic things, simple things. But there's something that happens when you engage in this design process, this understanding of design. It becomes an interesting challenge. It becomes something that you kind of get engaged in. You get infected by it, and you've got to keep finding out more. And you find it easier to remember the stuff because it is relevant to your existence. It becomes a terminal infection. It's no cure. You can't stop thinking about design because it's relevant to everything we do. It gives you this formula to look at things and go, let's assess whether that works or not, or whether we can make an adjustment, whether we can make things better. So that's kind of hopeful because we've got more and more students all the time. My watch is not working. How are we going? Yeah. Would you like any questions before we go to a tea break? Anybody got any burning questions they want to ask? We've got a microphone to pass around.
Hello, I just wanted to, wow.
Back there.
Okay. It's something which is really, we are talking about in Puglia. It's talking about the olive trees. Have you noticed the problem, the olive trees there we have here, about the Xylella problem? Did you have some information about what's happening and all this misinformation, too much information of how to deal with it? And as you said, there's a kind of a romantic attachment to the olive tree, which is kind of disturbing the real, way of getting the earth better, because the problem is the soil. So what do you think about it? How can we talk in a certain way that this romantic kind of approach to a tree is, is not allowing a process of a knowledge of how to make attention to the soil and biodiversity and ecosystems, and to build ecosystem? Does it happen in other parts of the world that sometimes we have this empathy historically or culturally about a tree, and that will stop also of realizing that there's a real problem, which is not keeping a tree that will resolve the soil problem.
Hello? It happens all the time. And nature comes in and sorts you right out, right? With wiping out your olive trees until you start behaving properly. Yeah. It can be sorted out for sure, but not with monoculture olives. There's a certain point of stress where gaps are filled by organisms that are not cooperating with your sentimentality. And they won't be here forever, but neither will we. But you read some of the new books. The great thing is this stuff has been written now. So there's, in English, I don't know how they are in Italian, but there's Fred Pierce's book, The New Wild, is one that talks about all this sort of thing. Inheritors of Earth by Christy Thomas. There are all these checks and balances where when you get a problem like this, it's because there's an empty niche in an ecosystem and an opportunistic organism comes in and fills that gap. Right? And takes that system into another level of equilibrium. But you don't see it that way. Right? You see it as sentimentality of monoculture olives. Of course, the olive had a natural point in an ecosystem before we started using it and planting it as a non-ecosystem element. And it could be repositioned quite easily in a more natural ecosystem type planting. Now, one of the great plant experts in permaculture is an American gentleman from Massachusetts, Eric Tonesmeyer. Eric Tonesmeyer is a co-author of a book, Forest Gardening, which is a 2-book series. It's a double book. Took him 20 years, him and Dave Jackie, to write it. He's written Cool Climate Food Forests to death. You never have to write it again, right? Now, Eric is now employed by Yale University, quite a lot of credibility there, to lecture on agroecology and food forests and permaculture food forest systems. And we have now proved that you get more production from the monoculture species. And you have to listen to what I'm saying here now. You get more production from your monoculture species when it's placed in an agroecology ecosystem permaculture type food forest planning. Not just you get more production because you've got a diversity of production trees in there, but the very element that was only planted by itself actually produces more when it's in amongst other species. Now, if we were talking about this, you'd say, oh, but the other species is going to use more of the water. The other species is going to use more of the fertilizer. You know, like, oh, no, they can't possibly party in a way that it's all happy, right? They can't be like all together having a nice happy dance together or you know, having a sociable party. They're going to argue. They're going to fight. No, that's us. We do that, right? You can have balanced ecosystems. So even the oil palm now, they've proven, of all the nasty monocultures that are out there, even the oil palm. Now, do the corporates really want that? Because it's a little bit more complex. And I tell you something else it does. It gives the individual farmer quite a lot of economic freedom. He's not enslaved now to a monoculture. He's not enslaved to a quota. So many of our agricultural productions are linked to a corporate quota. And you've got enslaved farmers with a monoculture mindset. Now, what I like about this region is I haven't seen so much of that. I've seen quite a lot of slightly smaller farmers with some links to diversity not that long ago and some still diverse. I don't think it's got so far to go back in this region. Other places, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. And it just sooner or later, some bug, some virus, something just comes in and takes those stress elements down. Now, if you just walk away from your olives, if you ever think about this, if you just walk away from a field and say, okay, we'll take the discipline. Nature's given us a smack, right? And said, get out of there. Get out of the way. If you do that and just lock it up, don't let anything go in there except natural elements, it comes back sooner or later, it's just a matter of time, it comes back into some sort of natural assembly of ecosystem forest. Now, it might not be your ancient forest, but what the hell is your ancient forest anyway? Because now when we do the studies, you know, it depends how long ago you want to call it ancient. Rabbits arrived in England 1,000 years ago, but we call them English rabbits. Chestnuts arrived only 300 years ago. You know, when you start to actually date when things arrived, what's native and what's not native? Is it an assembly that builds soil? If you are not building soil, increasing soil quantity and quality, you're not sustainable. Well, let's say if you want to really ride the razor's edge, you say, I don't lose any soil and my soil doesn't lose any fertility. I stay absolutely where I am. That's pretty hard to do. You may as well build some soil and build some fertility. And the real question is, how do you do that? Because when you do that, the ecosystems inevitably must be building, working with you, and you've got some kind of productive ecosystem where there's no room for that little problem that you've got. It's a very small thing. This is a very small element. It's quite funny. This tiny little thing's wiping out your olives. That's how vulnerable you are in that situation. That's the only answer there is. The other ones are just scientific things. They may genetically breed something. They may bring in some nasty chemical or some nasty drug or something that makes somebody else wealthy that's not the farmer. So you sentimentally get trapped in a system that's not very old. Mind you, this is the first time, give ourselves credit, give yourselves credit, this is the first time we've really, really thought this way. Indigenous people didn't damage the earth so much because they just didn't have the technology. They probably would have done if they'd been given the technology. But this is an evolution of humanity. This is when we start to use the design mind. Neurological science believes that when we started to read and write, our brains grew a little bit bigger, just a tiny bit. We actually grew an extra synapse over our brain. There was just a few more neurological connections that extended. And that was because we were putting numbers and words together and describing the world for the first time. It changed us. It was an evolution. We're facing a problem. We've got a global connected mind. We're on the internet. We hear all the problems. We see the news every day. We can see what's happening. And the challenge now for humanity is, how do we design a way out of this? With like a result that leaves an environmentally stable world. And I actually believe it's an evolution of humanity that we're talking about. It's that new shine. It's just a tiny little polish we're putting over our brains that gives us that filter, gives us intentional design. This is an approach. Otherwise, I don't know a lot about what you're saying, but I've heard about it. People have said about this problem. And without knowing about it, without knowing the finer details of it, I know what the answer is. I'm sorry to say. It's not simple, but there's no question how you can cure it. The sentimentality, I don't know whether you can cure that. Maybe it's just the open, honest discussion. And the other thing, obviously, we'll just put down the trials. We're no problem about doing. Let's go and do it. Let's go put it down. There's no problem with doing. It'd be quite quick to prove. If we were the only ones with good olives, it would be pretty obvious. We've done that before on quite a few sites. You can't do it, they told us. And then we did it without any research and said, well, you said we couldn't do it, here it is. Research it now if you want, but it doesn't really matter now, does it? We've done it. You know, you're just lost in the research if you're not careful.
L'idea, io sentivo anche poco fa qualcuno che diceva, va bene, ma come si fa ad applicare la permacultura se poi diciamo non si ottiene un guadagno, non si ottiene un reddito? Se noi vogliamo applicarla per ottenere un reddito è molto difficile ed è, diciamo, lungo il processo. La cosa è vera, però è anche vero che se non si incomincia in questo senso e se non si ha un approccio di questo genere, nel senso che alla fine nella vita non è necessario, io lo dico, adesso passerò un po' quasi per folle, il denaro è vero che non è tutto, cioè anzi probabilmente se si ha il modo di vivere senza denaro si vive molto più felici, quindi insomma l'applicazione di quella che è l'etica della permacultura secondo me senza una rivoluzione di pensiero è difficile anche da attuare. Grazie.
I'll do the pesticide last, but what you're saying is perfectly correct. But we don't need to be idealistic about this right now. Obviously, we're a long way down a complicated road of destruction already. And I actually thought we would be turning around by now. I actually thought, I was so naive in 1983 when I took my design course, I actually thought that this would be international policy by 1990. Boy, was I wrong. So when it came to 1990, I had a midlife crisis. And by 1991, I opted out of society and decided, I was very ideological, I decided I would rather starve in the gutter than ever compromise with the other conventional system. So I was a successful young entrepreneur, and I gave it all away, and just started to look after myself, and I only worked in permaculture. Well, I'm lucky I've ended up where I am, because it just got bigger and better for me as a teacher, consultant, and eventually I got onto the farm I wanted. But it's about making a move now. It's not going to be perfect straight away, but it's about taking on the ethics as much as you can and making a bit of a move and seeing how the opportunities start to arise. Something rather unusual starts to happen. So as you engage in, I just want a better life. Okay, I've got to carry on working. But like when I'm at work, I really just want to go out there and get involved in my permaculture garden or my permaculture life. So I'm at work kind of dreaming about it. Then at the weekend, I step over the line and get involved in it, but I have to go back to work on Monday. So I keep stepping over the line and going back. And it's kind of like, I want to live that life, but I'm actually stuck in this life. And then you're kind of dying every day quite a few times because you're not really happy with what you're doing and you want to be doing something else. And our memories are locked up in what we've done. Now, you don't own the future. That hasn't happened yet, and it might not happen the way you expect. This is the now. This is actually happening to you and me, all of us together now. This is it. But you do own what you've done in your memories. Now, if you've been doing boring work that you don't really like and it isn't that entertaining and it's not your passion, your memories don't remember it much. It's kind of like black and white, fuzzy, low grade, low definition, low quality memory. It's not very clear, it's kind of fuzzy. If you think back to the times when you've been either really, really scared or super happy, it's high quality, high definition, slow motion, technicolor memory. because your memories are anchored to your emotions. Now, permaculture is a moderating system. It moderates this energy flow. It moderates the rivers. We have less floods and less droughts. It eventually moderates climate. It moderates ecosystems. All these things. It's not extreme. It's not extremist. It's very moderate. What happens when you fully engage, and the more you can start to get engaged, eventually you'll get fully engaged, go over the line, and just have that permaculture life, where maybe you trade your jams, or you trade your work, or you only work 1 or 2 days a week doing what you love. It might be teaching people to play the guitar, for all I know, but that could be okay. That's the arts. You're only ever engaged in primary production, processing of primary production, the services or the arts. You might service people's cars because you like doing mechanics. You might not do it full time. You might do it 1 or 2 days a week. You might cut people's hair, that's a service. You know? But when you step over the line and feel like I'm responsible for everything I do helps my permaculture life of either doing something I love or providing for myself, something very unusual happens. Your memories expand because everything you do, you engage in. You love, growing your food, adjusting your house to be less energy consuming. You love cutting down your transport costs or your needs for energy. You love working your water systems out. It becomes like an interesting game. Your life becomes this interesting process of design refinement. Now, when you look back over a year, it feels like 5 years. You look back over 5 years, it feels like 20. Your memories expand because everything you're doing, you now consider meaningful. So it's like you've expanded the density of your life experience. And that's real value. So this is what people, unless you've experienced it, you couldn't describe that. It's hard to describe. So, like I haven't noticed the last hour go past because I've been engaged talking to you, right? And some of it I consider really important. I take this very seriously. I don't get depressed about it, right? I'm in a battle. I'm in a charge. There's a point when you decide, I'm stepping over the line. I'm not compromising with that anymore. I'm going to charge at the enemy that I believe is wrong. And, I think about the little kids. I've been in aid projects where I've seen horror stories, right, of innocent little children. We've got to try and stop this. It's not just us. We're well educated. We've got a computer. We've got smartphones. We should know better. We can do this. There's lots of millions of little innocents who are being born every second. They didn't choose this, and they haven't got much choice. That's how I think about. So when you're in a charge mentality, you're charging at the enemy, and you only die once. You either die in the battle or we win. Everything else, you have no fear. You just charge at it. That's kind of how I can talk to you without worrying about it. I'm just speaking from the heart. That's all. I didn't even get ready for this talk. I was joking with this Ignacio. I kept saying to Ignacio, "What is it you want me to talk about?" Even a few minutes before I. But listen, just one thing I'd like to mention about pesticide. The word "side" means it kills things. Herbicide, pesticide, fungicide, they're the biocide cocktails. They kill things, right? They are, now you look at what the chemical analog is that is common about all those things, right? And it's estrogen. The female hormone estrogen is the repeated analog in all those chemicals. Now, the one thing that's building up in the water cycle that's got common components in all of those is an estrogen drench. Now, you don't kill males, you kill females. Ask any farmer, right? I want you to kill your oldest cow first and come downhill. What's going to happen? You're going to have no cows, right? There's, the farmyard is a very female place. Right? You have lots of breeders. You only have one male, right? But he can't breed, right? You don't need many males, actually. We're pretty useless anyway, right? As far as extending species. With a laboratory, you actually only need one human male and you can fertilize 800 females with a laboratory. Right? Now, so if you're going to wipe out something, you want to wipe out the females. Now, that's why they do it. They want to wipe out the female organisms. But what's the side effect of that? And the side effect is infertility in males and feminizing males and masculinizing females. But if you want to start going towards depopulation and you start to have infertility in males, and you can see this, just look at the richest countries have the most infertility clinics. The poorest countries don't have any infertility clinics. Where people are under stress, they are more fertile as well. So it's the biological effect. Go to a war zone, everybody's fertile. Go where people are starving, everybody's fertile. Go to the richest countries where you have massive social support and you have the largest number of infertility. So there's a couple of effects here I want to mention. One is the chemical drench that we're in, which is called the estrogen drench. If we stop using chemicals today, we're increasing. We have a 50-year synapse before it's all sort of degraded down or washed through. Right? The other one is, if we define wealth in not monetary terms, but everywhere humans live, we have beautifully clean air, plenty of it, beautifully clean water, beautifully clean food, sensible housing, warmth, friendship, and community, we moderate, it naturally happens that our population rate goes down if that's the way we define wealth. So wealth is one thing, and the other one is the chemical perversion of saturating estrogen into the ground. So if we start spraying a lot of, that we don't need, dangerous chemicals, pesticide chemicals around, we've got to be very, very careful what the side effects are, because they're in our water cycles, and they keep coming back at us. So, one, it's an advantage if we redefine health with natural things, natural beneficial things, and two, you've got to be really careful where you force that effect and don't realize it. We ready for a break?
Okay, question. Mediterranean climates have a lot more population around the Mediterranean than they do in Tasmania and Australia. Well, everywhere has more population than Australia. We only have 24 million people and 7.5 million square kilometres. But we have to get things in scale. So when we start talking about patterning, we have to realize there is an order of scale of all things. And this is something that if you take your Permaculture Design Certificate course, you will be very shocked in the lecture, which is chapter 4 in this manual, called Pattern Understanding. There is no chance I would have enough time to explain it to you now. And if I did, you'd probably be too shocked anyway. But there is an order of size in all things that goes from 5 to 9. Now, don't ask me about numerology or whether 5 or 9 have any relevance, because they probably don't. But it's just the way creation works. And it doesn't matter if you're talking about the sizes of horses, rivers, mountains, seas, moons, galaxies, or the human skeleton, because you are part of this, and you have a 7 order of size and the skeleton breakdown of your bones. Right? And I can demonstrate that to you. But before I do, I want to point something out. The smaller the size, the larger the number, the faster the action. The larger the size, the lower the number, the slower the action. If you're talking about branches on a tree, because it has an order of size, the trunk is the only one on most trees, and then it breaks down in a dendritic pattern. So if it goes in threes, you have one trunk, three main large branches, 9 branches off those 3, 27 off that 9, and 81 off that 27, giving you a minimum breakdown of 5. And it could go all the way to 9, which will get us into the thousands, or 1,000 and something. So you're a 7, right? We're all 7s. So you have one spine, a breakdown to the elbow, to the wrist, off the fingers, off the finger, off the finger, and the same going down the skeleton of the leg. So you've got one spine, to the knee, to the ankle, to the foot, to the 2 joints on the toes. And this goes quicker than that. Right? So where there's more numbers, there's a faster movement, right? But they're smaller in size, greater in number. Okay, see if we can pull this into relevance right here. You only have so many farmers, and you have very few large farmers, but you have hundreds of people with small farms, and you have thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not millions, in small gardens, or only access to small land. Now, the smaller the size, the faster the action, the greater the number. The most productive land per square metre is 1 square metre on an acreage production value. So, I did a course a little while ago with Bill Mollison, one of my early courses with Bill in Melbourne University, and a gentleman came along with Greek descent. He was from Melbourne himself. We were teaching in Melbourne. And by the way, Melbourne is the 2nd largest Greek population in the world to Athens. So we have, apart from Athens, the largest Greek population in the world in any city is Melbourne. We have a very large Italian and Greek population in Melbourne. So he had a heritage of some farming with his family, but he'd grown up in Melbourne and he was a pharmacologist. His name is Angelo Eliadis. And he has a website, if you want to look it up, called Deep Green Permaculture. So, as a pharmacologist, he was very interested in health. And he happened to have a heritage of gardening. So he decided to go home and garden and record absolutely everything in inputs and output production, every single gram. But he only had a small bit of land, 64 square meters, his back garden. Now on that very small block of land, he planted 30 fruit trees. He used an American pruning method for home gardens where they're pruned 4 times a year, and they're planted so close that they actually reduce their full-size capacity. They become dwarfs. But he gets a cross-season of variety. So he has 4 varieties of apples planted really close to each other, so he can get apples over a larger period of time. This is the point of crowding them out. But he also, in that 64 square meters, has 70 to 80 types of vegetables and herbs, and 12 different types of berries, all in 64 square meters. And before I give you the production figures, I've filmed his garden a couple of times. He's not a pharmacologist anymore. He's a consultant to Melbourne Council on permaculture design. He worked full-time in an organic nursery as well, not full-time, part-time. He's really very, very busy with permaculture tours in his garden, and his life has completely changed. He's a full-time permaculturist in another way. He's also he's a writer for Organic Gardening magazine. Australia has an organic gardening magazine, permaculture magazines. There's a permaculture section in the gardening magazine. Our gardening shows on television have a permaculture section. They're primetime television. And we have most schools with a permaculture garden. And we even have textbooks in the schools that are permaculture textbooks. And some of our state education departments actually send their teachers to take permaculture courses. And the teachers like it because they find it's easier to teach children through permaculture, and the children are actually better behaved. There's actually psychological studies, even with special needs schools with autistic children and things like that, they actually get improved behaviour. I mean, it makes total sense. Kids love to be outside, they love to be eating a little bit of food, they eat food that they wouldn't eat at home, all kinds of issues. But that's Angelo, he's changed. His whole life has changed. Just from gardening 64 square metres. I'm sure most of us could get hold of 64 square metres. Melbourne has almost an identical climate to you guys, by the way. Now, before I give you the production figures, I sat there with Angelo one day and I said, how long do you spend in this garden? Like, how much time does it take? He said, 2 hours a week. Now, actually, that's a lot of time, because as a farmer, I think about area at a time. And I thought about it. I thought, let's call it 60. Forget the 4 a minute. That's 2 minutes a square metre. I mean, if you actually stand here and look at like 6 of these tiles, or maybe 4 of these tiles for 2 minutes, you'd probably think you could sort out any issues in there in 2 minutes, because you can see it. Now, if you bring it back to like 2 minutes a square metre, it's actually quite a lot of time, because there's some fruit trees in there that don't need to be stared at for 2 minutes every week. Obviously, there are things that are moving faster, annual vegetables and things. Creates all his own fertility with compost. He's in a city, easy to get waste. He's got compost and he's got worm farms. He's even got trials going. He's a researcher. He's got trials. And one of the trials I saw him do was conventional hydroponics. You know this stuff where they put solution in water and have no soil and no soil creation? Obviously it's not going to last because you've got no soil creation. Like aquaponics, kind of interesting, produces quite good food, aquaponics, but obviously the infrastructure doesn't create soil, so it's not going to last. Quite a good bandage for now though. But Angelo had hydroponics here on a wall just as a trial, and same crop compost got grown here. Like here, you could touch it and you could touch it, same crop. This one got pests and diseases, this one didn't. You could touch both of them. There's a very good reason for that, because this one's supported by incredibly good soil life, and this one's got soluble solution in water in a substrate of gravel. Same crop, same time, touch difference apart. People don't do enough of that research. Totally diseased, low production, real problem, no problem at all, that close. I can tell you why that works, but it's a bit of a thing, but you know, it took us a while to figure these things out. Okay, 64 square meters produces, if you extrapolate it out to an acre, you guys understand acres? 4,000 square meters instead of 10,000 square meters for a hectare. I don't know the hectare figure, we could work it out though. it is 13.5 tons to the acre. He's producing the equivalent of 13.5 tons to the acre. And very diverse. 30 types of fruit tree, variety in some of them, and 70 to 80 herbs and vegetables, and 12 species of berries. Now, if you go onto his website, he's got it all catalogued year by year. He's documented the whole thing. And it's because it's small and intense and urban, and you can have a lot more diversity in a small area, incredibly high nutrition, incredibly valuable food if you were selling it by nutritional value. Modern agriculture sells high volume, low nutrition. It specializes in low quality food, low nutrition. You can check it out with a Bricks reading. Just as an example, there are many, many places like this. If you want to search the world, the DeVos family in Pasadena, Los Angeles, produce 6,000 pounds in imperial measurement, because they're American, they do imperial, 6,000 pounds of food out of a quarter of an acre in the suburbs. There's lots. There's ones, another one in Australia called happyearth.com in Wollongong. 1/10 of an acre, right? Yeah. So there's this ridiculous production at a small area and a ridiculous diversity. And as you get larger, you get less production, right, per square meter, but you get your main cropping systems. So you then, if you want to gradate that down, if you want to do it gradations, right, you've got this incredibly high production per square meter in urban. Then you have perimeter urban, which is less productive per square meter, but still more productive than agriculture. And then you have the broader agricultural systems. Now, if you want to put that up against industrial agriculture on a global scale, and you want to measure nutrition, not food, but nutritional quality, industrial agriculture produces very low nutrition, but high volume. It has enormous amounts of inputs. It has enormous amounts of transport costs, because it's usually grown at a great distance and often moved right around the world from one side to the other. And it's usually cheaper on the other side of the world from where it starts, funnily enough, as if someone's favouring the transport companies or the use of fossil fuels. And enormous amounts of it is lost and never gets to the community, to the consumer, because of waste, massive amounts. None of this is wasted. None of it is transported anywhere. And the inputs are very small. In fact, it's 2 hours a week for one man. When you actually want to work those figures out and put one against the other, right, we can produce, with those systems, we can produce the same amount of nutrition as we presently produce globally with industrial agriculture on an equivalent of 4 to 6% of the same area. Now, you have to realize that 70% of the food in the world is still produced by small farmers. So only 30% of it is actually produced by industrial agriculture. But that industrial agriculture is so inefficient that we can beat it on 4 to 6% of the equivalent area if we convert it to urban. You don't have to believe me. Go and crunch the numbers yourself. You just go and look at the figures that are out there already. It adds up quite well. Now, I'm not saying that we're just going to convert everything from there to there straight away, but I'm just saying, don't ever think that you're overpopulated, that you can't get the production. You can easily get the production, very easily. But you have to convert the equivalent areas. And from what I've seen, I haven't seen many 1,000-acre farms. Got many 1,000-hectare farms out there in this region? 500 hectares? There is some? Yeah? Lots? In this region of Italy, is that a common thing, 1,000 hectares? No. Australia, if you go to inland Australia, a small farm is 1 million hectares. Go to inland Australia, for the big grazing blocks. I mean, it's getting ridiculous. It's 40 kilometres by 60 kilometres, you know. So, but that's in a very dry grazing landscape. But all I'm trying to point out to you is, this is just an urban 64 square metres. I actually have a student who does better than that. She's a Filipino lady who lives in a block of flats, and she produces 70 kilos of food on 20 square metres every year on a balcony. On a balcony. As you come down in size, the production goes up per square metre and the efficiency goes up. Now, in between there and a reasonable sort of farm, there are sweet spots of production that are appropriate to landscape. Okay, what do we have to consider here? Obviously climate, evaporation. And we've got evaporation figures from open ground. Okay. Then how do we get water to behave a little bit better for us? There's one thing that we can definitely do, and that is contour. Water doesn't move uphill for free. A little bit in capillary action, a lot up in trees, but generally in the open space, water moves at right angle to contour. It constantly moves. If this is a contour line, in other words, a level line going around the landscape, the water moves at right angle to this line. That is a constant about the way water behaves. That's why the valleys are wet and the ridges are dry. Now, if we can get water when it's on the landscape, whether it's our irrigation that we're pumping up from underground in this case, because you're going towards drier landscape, you're going to pump from underground, you're already pumping from underground, or whether it's a rainfall, light or heavy, if you can stop it and spread it and soak it. So to stop, spread, and soak. Soak. Water, you have created an extension of the entropy, because the water is losing energy as it comes downhill, and we know the way it behaves. It moves at right angle to contour. Now at the surface, you can actually see it moving. If you go out there and look at little soaks that run off roads, little tiny wet spots because there's been hard surface runoff. I was shown one the other day, that a little bit of water coming down a driveway caused a green patch in a field. When that water soaks in, it's not hundreds of times slower. It's thousands of times slower when it's soaking through the soil. When it's soaking through the soil, it is still at right angle to contour. So this becomes a very, very regular planning point. We need to find where we start and where we extend those lines to stop, spread, and soak water. Now, when you go in as a consultant, we have like a mantra of approach. Before anything else, we look at water, access, structures, because water is very, very constant. We know exactly how it behaves, and we know if we extend it, we extend the potential of life. And that's what this whole energy thing's about, life. So we want to find points that give us somewhere to start and then extend that contour line. And we would like to find the highest, longest contour line on any block of land. The highest and longest level line on this rounded landscape. Because, by the way, your landscape's still rounded. As soon as you become totally arid, it goes angular. Your landscape will start breaking down and the bones of the geology will come out. If you go to Matira, the famous cave city, and you look out from there, which I was there the other day, you have a landscape in that canyon that's breaking already into vertical scarps and angular pediments. The arid landscape has a different pattern to the humid landscape. Where I work in Jordan, in the Dead Sea Valley, 400 meters below sea level, it is angular. When you look up at Jerusalem or you look up at Amman, we can see the lights of Jerusalem at night. It's rounded. The hills of the Middle East are 1,000 meters high, are rounded, but they're breaking because there's been a long-term damage there and the trees, most of the forest is gone. So your rounded landscape will start to break down. You have a rounded landscape still. So there is a continuum of form in the landscape. And it's round, nice, soft, rounded hills, actually, what there is around here generally. So, and when we start to pattern this way and put our tree lines on these, we've got a water soak extension with the trees that have got a root net extension and a condensation addition. So if you get 1 millimeter of rain, the soak along this line, if we put the right earthworks in, will be like you've had 5 millimeters of rain. When you have a 5 millimeter rain, it will be like you've had a 20 millimeter rain on that line. Now, how do we find the highest, longest contour line? Where most of your land is reasonably square or blocks, it's quite simple. The lowest point on the highest boundary is the starting point for the longest, highest contour line. The longest, highest level line on that land will start at the lowest point on the highest boundary. Go to the top of the farm, go to the top of the land, any land, and find the highest contour line, the highest boundary. And go to the lowest point on that highest boundary and mark a level line, survey a level line, and it will be the longest, highest contour line on that land. You've got now a starting point that gives you a starting line that starts you designing water soakage that extends the water period on the land. It's only the beginning, because that then gives you the ability, gives you an easier ability to start growing the trees that will extend that water function. So the next thing to design is, how many of these do we put in? How much land can we spare? And also, where can we work with that? And really, we're going from working possibly up and downhill to working across the hill. And today, we're obsessed with machinery. So, the very small amount of walking I've done around farms here is sort of atypical spacing of things. Everything's spaced at machinery spacing. Your orchard trees have the width of a machine. Everything's spaced by the width of a tractor. That's just the normal way modern agriculture has approached things. But a tractor is not part of the natural system. A tractor had nothing to do with shaping this land. Oh, it's a great tool. I love my tractors. I love my tractor. I've got an Ezekiel four-wheel drive, four-way bucket, 50 horse. They're great. But like all tools, you've got to use them the right way. Otherwise, they cause a lot of damage. It can be a weapon even. Right? Now, if you're going to go sideways on a slope, you better decide how brave you are on that tractor, or maybe even what sort of tractor it is. You usually find somewhere between 10 and 15 degrees. And when you get steeper, when you get to 18 degrees, it's probably best going into forest. So it's a global figure worldwide that 18 degrees should be in trees or some kind of stability planting. That's used globally. The lowest plateau in China, an area the size of 35,000 square kilometers, an area the size of country of Belgium, was repaired and rehabilitated by the UN over 10 years, and they used 20 degrees. At 20 degrees, it had to be forested. At less than 20 degrees, it could be put into tree production. And they didn't allow anybody to crop on anything steeper than 2 degrees. But they were on lower soil. They were on really, really fragile soil. Some of the worst eroded landscape on this planet has been completely repaired. Incredible story. And you can see lots of films on it. Hope in a changing climate. Green and Gold. I'm in Green and Gold with John D. Liu. So what we need to decide is, one, the slope we're going to do this on, which is not the steep slopes, where we can go sideways, what the spacing is between these, so we don't lose too much production, but we gain the fertility of the tree belts. We gain the stability. So what we end up with is an ability to reduce evaporation from shade, reduce evaporation from wind, hold water longer, and use some fertilizing trees. Trees like ones that I've seen here, like honey locust, Robinia pseudoacacia, Albizia julibriescens. I've seen both of those trees here. Nitrogen fixing trees that when you cut them, they produce mulch for the ground and they regrow. Now, it's not just a method, it has to be a strategy. A method is how you do something, it's one dimension. A strategy is how and when. And permaculture is about patterning, it's multi-dimensional. But let's just come back to a strategy a second, because I'm talking about trees at the moment, that when you cut them, they regrow. It's called coppice or pollard. So if you cut it low to the ground and it resprouts from low on the ground, this is a coppice, and a pollard is a higher cut and it regrows from a taller cut. Most of the time we use this one. When you do this, the roots drop the nitrogen off the bottom and the mulch at the top adds organic matter to the soil. Now, when we're talking about roots, they're not 2 dimensions, it's a 3-dimensional dendritic pattern. You can't make it with a machine. It's a river running backwards pattern. It's the perfect composting pattern. When that starts to rot and regrow, like the stump regrows, the roots seal off, because it can't pump from a big root system with no leaves. It seals the roots, and the lower half of the roots start to degrade, and the nitrogen connection on the roots, which is a bacteria, they die, but they get eaten by other bacteria, and they get eaten by other bacteria, and it migrates the nitrogen into the soil as living bacteria. What we now know is the bacteria in the soil is 90% nitrogen, but you can't dissolve it. It's alive. It's living organisms made up of nitrogen. you can sure kill them. You can do the wrong thing and kill them. If you don't feed them, if you don't have organic matter coming down to them. So now we start to look at how many spaces do we make? How many lines do we make? And what's the production area in between? Well, the production area in between of a productive tree lines on contour is either grazing or cropping, or more trees. The whole thing can be trees if we want. We can have a tree combination in here, or we can have vegetable cropping, or we can have a grazing system in here. All of them can be adjustments on the tree line. If we're going to put, I see quite a lot of nice dairy systems, and you have some beautiful cheeses. I've tried a few. There are a lot of trees that feed cows that add extra production to cows and take the pressure off the pasture. And that's what you need to do with grazing. And you need to start to work out the patterning between these contour lines on the appropriate slopes. Now, if you imagine that the slope gets a little bit steeper as it goes up the hill, and that's going to go the steeper land into forest, you're going to get trickle-down nutrient from above as well. And each line is going to have trickle-down nutrient. And if you know anything about cows, right, they spend a lot of time walking on contour, and they spend a lot of time in comfortable spots, like your dogs. You want to find a nice warm spot, the dog's always there, right? In summer, a cool spot. So they'll de-stress themselves by going to the edge of these systems. If they start dropping manure on the top edge, when it rains, that manure goes into the soakage system and dilutes all the way along contour. You don't have to do it. It does it on its own. Water does that with manure. If they go below the contour line, because that's more comfortable, because of sun or shade or whatever, that nutrient goes to the pasture. So we start to put the animals into function in relation to the patterning. We start to put the crops on contour for appropriate soakage and minimizing the water. Now, I haven't even described what these things are, but nothing soaks water like these earthwork swale systems, even if they're shallow soils, like you have some shallow soils. When they're combined, swales are tree growing systems. They take 7 years to fully charge in all climates. So you get the first rainy season, the first winter season, you'll get, say, a 5% gain of moisture below the contour line. In the second year, you might get 35% because you've already got 5%. It wets quicker. It's not wet, it's just damp. In the third year, it goes again. In the fourth year, it goes a bit more. In the fifth year, it goes a little bit. In the sixth year, it goes a small amount. And in the seventh year, you're just about full. It won't gain any more moisture after about 7 years. But at that point, it wets up the quickest. And once your trees are up, and you've got the condensation addition, you've got the wind buffering, and you've got the extra shade in those contour lines, any surplus water recharges the aquifer. And where along that contour line you hit an impervious layer, anywhere that water's soaking, you get a new spring. I've got 20 new springs on my farm in 17 years. I've got more than one a year. New springs. So the advantage goes on. Now you're actually pumping from underground, So you have an obligation to set up systems that recharge the aquifer. And if you get enough of these going, not only does it recharge the aquifer, but it also starts to bring some surface water up as new springs, which means you're not even charging the aquifer, you're not even putting a dent on the aquifer, it's already at the surface. It doesn't happen on its own. It means you have to survey it out, work out where you put in these soakage systems. Then you have the choice, what trees do I use? And you've got to ask, what am I going to do in between? And then how far apart are they? So when we're on hill country, we can actually work out with the height of the trees the vertical line back to the height of the trees at their full height is about all we need to do, which works fine. As it gets steeper, they're going to be closer together. As it gets shallower, they're going to get further apart. Both P.A. Yeomans, who wrote the book Water for Every Farm, and Bill Mollison, P.A. Yeomans started a system called Keyline Farming, working on the key line. This all works until you get onto flat country. And then when you get on the flat country, slope doesn't have a bearing on it because it's too flat. You can't go the height of the tree, the full height of a potential tree at a horizontal across, because it might be a kilometre. So at this point, we have to start working out wind strength. It's the wind lift that we start to calculate the distance here, reducing the wind stress. So if you can imagine that each one of these is creating an organic matter rich line of trees. Each one of these has a plume of water wrapping around the contour. And quite often, after 7 years or so, one catches the next one up. Even though, it might not rain all summer. You might have 3 to 4 months with no rain at all. Some of this water might take 2 years to get a few hundred meters down the hill. That's how slow it's moving. So it starts to catch each other up, and we have a rehydration process. And water in the lower slope starts to just pop to the surface where you have particular geology. Now, you might not know where that is. I didn't on my property. When water did pop to the surface and I looked at what it was, then I could see it afterwards. Afterwards, I go, oh yeah, there were some plants there that were kind of marsh-like already, but there was no water before. Now there's water. I could kind of see it later. Some young designers, some people who are learning these systems now, when they're in their 60s, they'll be able to see 20, 30, 40, 50 years into the future. I can't. I can give you mainframe design. I can guarantee that mainframe design. The next evolution, I think I give you a 50% guess, I get it right, but that's all. An evolution after that, 1,000 probably, 100 I get it right. Some of the young people who are learning this now, some people come to me and they're just left school and they're not even going to work in the other system. They're full-time permaculturists from the moment they leave school. By the time they're 60 years old, they've already ridden on what we've done. You wouldn't be able to understand them right now. I wouldn't be able to understand them. You know, by the time they've done 40 years of this on top of what we've already started, we wouldn't understand what they're talking about. You wouldn't believe them, probably. That's how much of an evolution we're involved in. So now, I don't want to go too much into this. I'm just going to give you the mainframe sort of approach to desertification and how we work on this. But of course, all of us are locked into particular production. And I would hazard a guess that your production has become less diverse like everybody else's. At one time, this area had a lot more diversity and identity. You had an identity. You are who you are of this land. The land is the identity of you. I hear things about cheeses that are maybe going to disappear. I hear things about small herds of cows. I hear things already that I'm thinking, oh yeah, it's going to break down if we're not careful. Now, we have 800 times more diversity than we had in the Middle Ages. I grow crops that people have never even heard of in my region. It would be the same here. There is enormous diversity potential that is not at this moment commercial. There's just no market. You know, I grow turmeric, I grow acacia, I grow cassava, I grow cocoa yam, you know, I grow galangal. You know, most people haven't even heard of these things unless you're Asian or whatever. We create recipe books for every month of the year. Is there a recipe book that covers this region every month of the year? I mean, you're food people, as I don't see it. But the best way to know what is truly the identity of this region is to have a January recipe book, a February recipe book, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. One for each month means that everything you're reading is right that month. That's a truly sustainable recipe book. Some things will be right, some things will be available every month of the year, and some won't. You won't be able to get watermelons in the winter, I would hazard a guess, right? You know, but you get them in the summer. You know, there are some things, so, you know, to re-identify ourselves, to get your fingerprint back, to get the character. And look, this is getting trendy as well. I hear you're already being a sort of tourist destination, a place that people want to come to. What they love is what is uniquely from this region. But let's forget a little bit about the history. We've got what we had, we could get that back, but there's new stuff. It's called climate analog. In permaculture, we do what we call climate analogs. Good designers do climate analogs. I want to know your latitude, your altitude, and your distance from an ocean or sea. Now, you've got the Mediterranean on both sides of the peninsula as well, but I want to know east or west coast, because there's a difference between the east coast and the west coast, even on a peninsula like this, because there's a rain shadow on one side and not the other. And when you do these climate analogs, you can then fly around the world, even with Google Earth, and find similar climate analogs where productive species will work, yours for them and them for us. And you can do it north and south of the equator, because the species aren't worried if they cross the equator, okay? Some of your species probably already come from the southern hemisphere. You know, well, your tomatoes do. I often say, imagine Italy without tomatoes, you know. But, you know, if you start to take this type of thinking, there's no problem about the diversity on those lines and in between those lines. There's no problem with production and occupying this space. Because not only are you talking about an extra diversity, you're actually talking about an extra processing of that diversity. I was watching ladies today make pasta by hand, here, just somewhere near here, you know. It was processing, basic hand processing right in front of me. So you're either a primary producer, a processor of a primary producer, or you're services or the arts. This is what we do. This is what we do in a region. This is what identifies us as being different to another region, even within Italy. If you start to chase that down, right, and apply systems that rehydrate, build soils, and create extra employment, and link some of that to urban agriculture and perimeter urban agriculture, you have no problem. You have no problem at all. No problem with the population you've got. It's not that much. China was self-sufficient in 1890. And it didn't use any of the world's fertilizer. It was still organic in 1890. America was not self-sufficient at 1890. And America had 40 acres per person, China had 2. And if you want to read about that, there's a book that was published in 1911, and the author is F.H. King, and the title of the book is Farmers for 40 Centuries, and it's published by Rodale Press, and it's still published today. F.H. King was an American who traveled through China, Korea, and Japan, and documented agriculture. I'm not saying they were right. They weren't using permaculture design. They just happened to be organic on a small area. They happened to be productive. They're not anymore. They're one of the largest users of agricultural chemicals. But back in history, they were not, and they're a very small amount of area. But this is not that. This is intentional design with diversity for stability and a sustainable system. Where's the boss? We're over time. You guys are supposed to stop me at 6 o'clock. We're over time. Sorry, mate. Do you have the place rented for longer?
Allora, io sono un agricoltore qui della provincia di Bari, sto a Castellana Grotte, che sta a circa 40 km più a sud di Bari. La mia azienda agricola si sviluppa un po' tra i comuni di Castellana. Faccio giusto una piccola premessa prima di arrivare alla domanda per capirci un po' dove voglio arrivare con il mio discorso. Quindi, come dicevo, si sviluppa tra i comuni di Castellana, Conversano, Polignano e Monopoli. Coltivo qualche migliaio di ulivi, secolari anche, la buona parte secolari, tra le altre ho anche mandorli, ciliegi, vigneti, insomma produco un po' di roba, ecco. Allora, volevo fare questa premessa perché proprio si è parlato, del resto del problema che abbiamo adesso in Puglia, degli ulivi. Molto spesso ho sentito dire di romanticismo, del nostro romanticismo che ci lega un po' anche agli ulivi secolari. Per come la vedo io, per me gli ulivi io non sono attaccato ai miei ulivi per romanticismo, ma per un problema economico, perché io dagli olivi ci pago le bollette. Quindi comunque sia, per me gli olivi sono importanti. Voglio fare una premessa, oltre a questo comunque sia sono allevatore, quindi allevo anche cavalli da tiro pesante che utilizzo in azienda, che mi aiutano nell'azienda agricola nei lavori in campo, perché ho ritrovato che mi sono accorto che nei nostri areali, con gli spazi che abbiamo, i cavalli da tiro diventano molto utili nelle lavorazioni in campagna. Nella mia azienda agricola quello che è l'agrochimica l'ho vista da bambino, quindi ormai sono alcuni decenni che praticamente non c'è più e quindi conduco un certo tipo di agricoltura. Sempre ritornando al problema degli ulivi, diciamo che sono circolate una serie di informazioni tipo le piante resistenti, che io ho da tanti anni, però le ritengo un'emerita fregatura, perché se non le avessi mai messe ci avrei guadagnato molto di più, anche perché anche queste fantomatiche piante resistenti negli ultimi anni stanno iniziando a disseccare anche loro. Il problema, dove voglio arrivare? Noi abbiamo questa situazione qui che, come dicevo, gli olivi secolari sono anche per noi una certa riserva di acqua. Dovremmo andare a piantare queste nuove piante, irrigandole con cosa? Con l'acqua del mare, perché non abbiamo altra acqua. Dai pozzi artesiani ormai tiriamo solamente acqua salmastra. Quindi questo per fare un po' lo schema della situazione che abbiamo oggi in Italia, qui in Puglia con gli ulivi. Allora, giustamente, come sentivo prima, ha detto il clima è la linea guida di qualunque progetto noi vogliamo mettere in campo. Quindi, in virtù di questa situazione, che comunque sia ci sono gli enti amministrativi che ci impongono a noi agricoltori una serie di situazioni, ci sono degli studi scientifici condotti dalla Regione Puglia che dicono l'esatto opposto. In virtù di questa situazione qui, noi, se vogliamo fare un discorso legato al clima e quindi legato a quella che è la situazione che abbiamo oggi in Puglia legate agli olivi, come ci dovremmo comportare come agricoltori? Seguendo quello che è il clima attuale, qual è la situazione attuale, o in prospettiva, come spesso si dice, ad esempio ci stanno proponendo di piantare le piante tropicali, mango, che ne so, altro. In questa situazione qui è possibile realizzare un progetto in questi termini?
No, I don't think so. I don't imagine you're going to change that much. It's a long change to get to mango from here. And if that happens, I think we're in a different world. You only just grow citrus in courtyards that I can see. You know, we have a couple there in Cyprus. They're actually between Greek and Turkish Cyprus. They're in the no man's land. You can look them up. They've broken the world record by a long, long way on olive oil quality. They're both students of mine. Nicholas is French, and Nicholas and Maria Baltazzi, she's Greek. They actually got married, they met at my institute. I've had a lot of marriages at my institute, from my institute. I've even had a second marriage from my institute, you know. First marriage met and second marriage met. So they went back to, Nicholas went back with Maria to Greece when they had the economic crisis, and they tried to get things going there and ended up in Cyprus, in between the Turkish and Greek border, land that they could take up. And they actually, I think they quadrupled the world's record on...
They measured 3,000, sorry, the measurements were 3,760 milligrams per kilogram of phenolic compounds and polyphenols, which, if you look at the standard for the EU, it's 250 milligrams per kilogram. There was recently an article that came out about 3 days ago that says right now, this year, he has oils that are up to 5,000 milligrams per kilogram of phenolic compounds, polyphenols. So he's actually broken his own record.
And the reason is that they went and put these systems together. Right? Now, what we need to start thinking about is, what I would do is I would approach this I would look at what would be our canopy trees if we were going to put a productive forest together. What would be the tallest trees, you know? And I would start to put together the productive canopy, the understory, the smaller, lower story, and whatever potential ground covers and herbaceous assemblies I could put together. And it wouldn't necessarily be the way it went together, but I'd like to know what they could be in size. And then I'd go for the same. I want to go long-term legume support species, medium-term legume support species, short-term legume support species, and ground cover. that I want to put in there at the same time, or I want to plant first and then come back and put the fruit trees in later. I think we're in a hurry, so I'd put them all in together. I usually plant everything at once. But you can do the support species first, then move in with the productive species. But I think we're short on time, and it's getting shorter. So these swale systems put in this very slow moving soak. There is potential for growing grapes over the swale with the trellis swale, which reduces evaporation when we get moisture there. Olives don't need as much, so we can irrigate olives above with other support species that we're pollarding and cutting organic matter. Now, you must think of when you would cut that organic matter, and I didn't finish that, so I better do it now. I just remembered. The time to do it is when the period of evaporation over rainfall finishes and rainfall over evaporation starts. So your midsummer is definitely evaporation over rainfall. That's when you want full leaf cover, full shade by your support species. You don't want to cut until the rainfall gets higher than the evaporation or the temperature starts to cool. So that's round about this time of year. When we start to cool, it's the autumn in this Mediterranean climate. For me, it's the spring, because I'm the other way round. We have a dry winter and a wet summer. So we cut in the spring. But the temperate climates, you cut in the autumn and you open up so there's more light coming through in the autumn and winter. And then come the spring, the growth goes on, but it's only little growth. It doesn't restrict the growth of your trees, and it's midsummer before you're at full growth. So when you do this mixtured assembly, you have a lineage. So I presume that what you have is a block of grapes and a block of olives and a block of almonds, and they're all machinery spaced, or in your case it might be draft horse spaced. We can still space that way, but on contour. And then you get a naturally restricted situation where you can't drive a tractor on a steep hill sideways without being too dangerous. Now, this is a water infiltration system, but it's also a tree-grown system. In between could be more simplistic. Like I say, it's probably going to be grazing or crops or another tree system. Now you may ask a question, what do you mean another tree system? Okay, around the house, around close to the garden, you have a very diverse garden potential, right? You have a very, very diverse garden potential. What is the point of having a simple garden in this climate? You could easily have hundreds of different herbs and vegetables. But you have a forested system near the house where you can have enormous numbers of fruit trees. Most of them would not be commercial. And you have a diversity on these lines that could be quite diverse. But in between, which trees would you choose? The trees that grow the easiest. And you've already got a clue. What has been grown commercially here before? Almonds are already grown, still grown. Olives are still grown. Grapes are grown. You know, you tell me. I'm not going to tell you. Pomegranate is another one I've seen, obviously. Fig, you probably wouldn't grow loquat. I see loquats growing. I think you could probably grow ziziphus. I saw some ziziphus the other day. Jujube is a dried fruit as well. You know, there's lots more than what we've got in blocks. Now we can mix in between these swales with what we know is pretty hardy. But let's mix it. I said to you, what builds the body of the tree? The minerals from the soil. If it's all pulling olive minerals up, it starts to exhaust the soil after a while. Olives live for 1,000, 2,000 years. Where in the Middle East, there are olives that I've seen that go from this wall to here, you know, huge. But if you look at the old ones, they're in mixed systems. They've got vegetables growing around them. There's mulberries growing around them. They're not in monocultures, those really old ones. They're in old-fashioned, what we call old-fashioned systems. So yeah, it's a little bit of the, but it's contour, it's surveyed, it's rehydration. Now, the only thing I can say to commiserate, to say, oh, so you've got monocultures, what are you going to do? At least you can transplant olives. Of all the trees, like olive is one that you can pick up and move. Yeah, you can. You get very large olive transplants. You've got to cut the tops right out of them, pick them up and move them, you know. And it's like date palms. You can move date palms. Most of your palms you can transplant. Inheriting a fruit tree plantation is a bit of a problem. I don't like to have to tell you that, but it is a bit of a problem, right? So when I say at least you can transplant an olive, that is one advantage, right? So what we're actually talking about is a repatterning. But if it creates a system that goes on forever, permanence, you're going to go down in history as the ones who started it, at least. You know, it's going to go on indefinitely. Permanence doesn't stop. Well, what we've got is we've got a system that's gone from small diverse farms to less diverse to machinery spaced, right? And the ability to work larger area, and now we're going to start paying the price. And globally, it's not just you guys, it's everybody is doing the wrong thing, right? So we've got a climate change that relates to, we've got to destroy huge amounts of natural systems to get production for the world's population. And we're told that that's the only way. That's not the only way. That is not the only way. There's no question about that. And we don't have an actual choice, really. But what we create is much nicer. It's much more individualistic. We become a character. We become who we were once and more. And right now, that's pretty trendy as well. You know, that's pretty fashionable, luckily. You know, so my advice would be change 10% at a time. If you've got a farm, and if you can, obviously you can't afford just to change 100% in one go. I know what it's like. You're locked in the bank or you're locked in production. You've got to have some income. But if you can change 10%, even 5%, if you claim 5% each year, in 10 years, you'll be able to change the last 50% because you'll already be in production. If you change 10% a year, in 10 years, you've done it all. But I expect in 5 years, you'll have done it all because by the time you get halfway through, you'll just do the last 50% in one go because you'll be in production at the other end. And no, well, hardly anybody in agricultural advice is going to tell you this. But what is funny is the agricultural countries are coming to us. Jordan is asking us to set up demonstration sites because they see what we've done in Jordan. Agricultural departments in different countries are now asking our system to be demonstrated. You have to ask why. Because maybe they know. There's a great curiosity coming now. And my websites are like Geiger counters. They're like indicators. And I've just seen a pulse of inquiry come in. You know, when bad things happen in the world, we get busier. When wars happen in the world, we get busier. When really nasty presidents get elected to powerful countries, without mentioning any names, we get busier, right? Because people are looking for an alternative. They're going, oh, we don't want this. You know, like, what's the other thing? Is there something else we could do? The IPCC report came out a few days ago, and they said, we're not going to get climate slide at 3.5 rise in temperature above industrial levels. We're going to get it at 2.7. And this is a reaction to some of the political action that's working in the world, happening in the world. The international research of massive numbers of scientists have come out to say it's not 3.5 degrees rise, it's 2.7. And 2040 might not be it. It might be 2030. We're not talking very long. And you know, these are people who are employed to do this. And they're talking about irreversible damage. And the IIPC report said, and this is really first time ever, these are international renowned scientists, lots of them, right, are saying, don't wait for governments. Governments are too bureaucratic, they're taking too long. We've got to do it ourselves. We have to do it. Don't wait. And that's what, and we've had a pulse of inquiry come in, a big pulse of inquiry come in. Can't even handle it all. But I believe that change only happens at this level. Change only ever happens at local level. It doesn't happen from governments. We're the ones who change things quick. And then they learn from us. That's what democracy should be.
Grazie Geoff, grazie Ramis. Vogliamo chiudere, capisco che siamo tutti un po' stanchi, la giornata è stata lunga, però abbiamo un'ultima cosa da dire e un'ultima persona da presentare. È vero che il cambiamento parte dal basso, non dobbiamo aspettarci nulla. Forse sarò ripetitivo, però il libro, il manuale di permacultura, la versione italiana del manuale di permacultura, come anche la versione inglese, è nata dal basso, è nata attraverso una raccolta fondi, è nata attraverso l'organizzazione di un gruppo di ragazzi che si è riunito e ha pensato, non una casa editrice famosa, un gruppo di ragazzi giovanissimi, tra le altre cose. Io sono il più anziano, con 40 anni, quindi gli altri sono tutti super giovani. Un gruppo di ragazzi che si è riunito e ha deciso di tradurre la famosa Bibbia. Tra tutti questi ragazzi c'è uno che durante uno dei corsi organizzati con Ramis, durante il corso iniziò a leggere le prime pagine e a tradurle. Quindi è uno del gruppo di traduzione, che è quello che è stato, diciamo, lo start-up che ha dato poi vita al progetto. E questo è Giuseppe Birardi, che invito a parlare, perché Geoff Lawton ha letto il libro molte volte, Ramis anche. Giuseppe Birardi è quello che nel gruppo più di tutti si è spolpato il manuale, nel vero senso della parola, perché è lui che ha iniziato a tradurre il manuale, è lui che ha coordinato il gruppo di traduzione e quindi ha assistito, insieme alla signora che forse sentirete parlare in questo momento nei vostri auricolari, che ci ha aiutato nella revisione, Tiziana Tursi, che in questo momento sta traducendo per tutti, insieme a Marilena Cassano, che è quella che vi risponde alle email, che ora fa la segreteria dell'associazione, però è colei che con me e Giuseppe si è occupata della revisione del libro, con Susanna Camerlengo, che è un'altra ragazza del gruppo di traduzione, lei ha tradotto il capitolo 10. Cioè, un gruppo di ragazzi messi insieme per tradurre il manuale. E lascio a Giuseppe il compito di dire cos'è questo manuale, come utilizzarlo e a che cosa può esserci utile.
In italiano, ok. Chiedevo. Sì. Geoff solitamente c'è un video famoso in cui ci impiega un'ora per spiegare cos'è il manuale, ed è molto riduttivo. A volte anche le 72 ore canoniche sono solo sufficienti a scuotere nostro animo dentro abbastanza forte da darci abbastanza determinazione per cambiare e per provare davvero a fare quello che vogliamo. E so che la giornata è stata molto impegnativa e quindi cerco di condensare il tutto nel poco. E il poco è questo, che si parte dall'ispirazione, l'ispirazione va comprovata e va testata, va messa alla prova con la propria determinazione, e la determinazione va portata avanti anche oltre ciò che si crede di poter fare, e anche oltre ciò che si realizza che è giusto, non è giusto, va bene, va male. Una volta che si decide si porta fino alla fine, e è sempre importante trovare persone che condividono ciò che si ha dentro e che sono pronte a sostenerti. E bisogna cercare, bisogna ammettere di avere difficoltà, bisogna sostenere gli altri, essere pronti a sostenere gli altri. E questa è come una piccola ricetta che va bene, ho trovato che funziona, e sono contento che da una semplice decisione di tradurre una pagina al giorno nasce questo, e persone si ritrovano per la prima volta in Italia, le chiese si popolano di parole riguardo all'agricoltura e alle piante, e questo è tutto ciò che ho visto nel libro da quando l'ho aperto. E questa è stata la motivazione, e penso che questo unisce molte persone, e questo anche è l'invito che faccio a voi per usare questo libro. Usate questo libro come un riferimento per provare a fare veramente ciò che volete, darvi delle priorità. Questo libro è pieno di priorità. Datevi delle priorità, mettetele alla prova queste priorità e portatele avanti. È pieno di conoscenza, di nozioni, di cose che non capirete, è vero, ma perché bisogna capire tutto? Non bisogna sempre capire tutto, però è importante continuare a provare fermamente a fare ciò che crediamo, perché è giusto. I'm done. That's okay. Grazie Geoff per tutte le risposte che ci ha dato e per il meraviglioso pomeriggio che ci ha regalato. E Ramis per questa mattina, e Ignazio per aver organizzato tutto questo e aver creduto nel progetto, aver creduto in me e aver creduto in ogni persona che ha voluto partecipare, ogni persona che si è proposta. Va bene, lui ha questa fantastica capacità di ascoltarti e di dire va bene, vediamo, però ti crede in te, ti supporta e dice io so scrivere, ok? Lui dice va bene, se ti capita di aver bisogno di una persona che scrive, ti contatta, beh vuoi scrivere? Scrivi. E questo è lui, il suo nome è Ignazio, che in latino è fuoco, e gliel'ho detto dall'inizio, c'hai questa cosa, hai la capacità di accendere le altre persone, quindi stammi vicino e vedi che andiamo lontano, gli ho detto. E grazie Ignazio.
Vabbè, questa è solo la dimostrazione che nonostante ognuno di noi possa avere quell'individualismo che cerchiamo, è il lavoro di gruppo quello che quel lavoro di gruppo lì, no? E così come nell'ambiente vegetale, è così anche tra di noi, è il lavoro di gruppo che ci permette di andare avanti. Io vi ringrazio per aver partecipato, non so quanti di voi vengono a cena, comunque da qui adesso lentamente, con calma, ci muoviamo verso il posto in cui andremo a fare questo aperitivo. Vi ringrazio tutti, è stato un piacere avervi qui, a presto.